The rain was so heavy that it slammed against rooftops like tiny fists, flooded the gutters, and painted the red earth brown. The wind blew so hard it made doors tremble and windows cry. But even louder than the rain was the silence in the streets. Nobody dared step outside except one person. He walked slowly, dragging his feet like he had carried the whole world on his shoulders. His shirt was torn in 3 places, and his trouser had more patches than cloth. Water poured from his hair down his face and into his open wounds. A small sack hung on his back. It was wet and sagging. From inside their homes, people watched him, not with pity, but disgust. Useless thing. Can't you see the rain? A woman screamed from behind her curtain. Why don't you just disappear, always roaming like a lost goat? Another shouted, but he didn't answer. His eyes were fixed forward, like he was heading somewhere only he knew, like he had a reason to walk through the storm. In a compound at the very end of the muddy street, someone else was watching him. She was only 19, but anyone who saw her would think a goddess had fallen from the sky. Her bare feet stood on the cold floor of the veranda as she watched the man through the rain. She felt something, not fear, not pity, something deeper, a strange heaviness in her heart. The man was now directly in front of their gate, his legs trembling. Then, without thinking twice, E&I rushed out from the veranda and into the rain. "Hey, sir, please come in here," she shouted. The beggar looked up, blinking against the drops. His lips trembled, but he said nothing. "Come and wait under our veranda till the rain stops. Don't stay there in the cold." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. E&I held the gate open and stepped aside. He walked in slowly, looking around, almost like he was surprised someone had spoken kindly to him. She placed a small wooden bench under the veranda and motioned for him to sit. "Here, sit down." He lowered himself gently, every bone in his back cracking like broken sticks. His eyes kept darting about, at the windows, the walls, the sky. He looked as if he wasn't used to shelter. E&I went inside and brought out a cup of water. "Here," she said. He took it with shaky hands, smiled faintly, and drank. "Thank you," he said. That was when the trouble started. Bang! The front door flew open. E&I, a voice screamed. It was Grace, E&I's stepmother. She stormed out, her eyes wide like someone who had seen a ghost, holding a broom high in the air. "What is this thing doing here?" "Ma, please." He was outside in the rain. "Just shut up. You brought a cursed beggar to this compound? God forbid." She raised the broom higher and stepped forward. But just before the broom landed, another voice interrupted her. "Grace, stop," E&I's father said firmly from the doorway. "Dear, did you see what your daughter brought inside? A dirty, sickly beggar into our home." I said, "Let him be," he said again. Grace frowned and hissed loudly. She threw the broom aside and marched back inside. The beggar remained seated quietly, eyes lowered. E&I's father stepped forward and gave him a small nod of respect. The man smiled, bowed his head a little in return, and whispered, "Thank you, sir." For the next 20 minutes, no one said a word. The rain kept falling. The beggar sat still. E&I stood by the door, arms folded. And her stepmother kept peeking through the window, grumbling and mumbling things. When the rain finally stopped, the beggar stood. "I'll go now," he said quietly. E&I nodded. "All right, take care of yourself." The beggar turned and slowly walked out of the compound. Grace rolled her eyes so hard they nearly disappeared into her head. But did he really leave? 2 weeks earlier, E&I's world had already started falling apart. Her mother had died 5 years ago, and her father, after mourning for a year, had married Grace, a woman who wore loud makeup and louder attitudes. Grace hated E&I. She didn't hide it. She didn't try to pretend. The moment her father left for work, Grace would shout at her, send her to the stream 3 times a day, and sometimes lock her out of the kitchen. Still, E&I endured. She loved her father too much to complain, and she believed that if she just remained quiet and good, maybe one day her stepmother's heart would soften. But it never did. Then things got worse. Grace started bringing a man to the house. His name was Festus. He was short, had a crooked tooth, and sold spare parts at the junction. He was also rude, greedy, and almost twice her age. And one day, Grace called E&I into the sitting room and dropped the bomb. "You're going to marry Festus." E&I blinked. "Ma, you heard me. Your father already agreed. You'll be his wife before the end of the month." E&I's heart stopped. "Festus, that man? Better thank your stars. Someone wants to marry a useless girl like you." E&I ran into her room and cried like a baby. When her father returned that evening, she begged him with shaking hands and red eyes. "Papa, please don't let them marry me off like this. I'm only 19. I don't love him. Please." Her father looked at her, sighed deeply, and said, "I'm sorry, my daughter, but Grace says Festus will help me open my shop again. I have no choice." And just like that, her fate was sealed. Or so they thought. Back to the present. That same night, after the beggar had left, something strange happened. E&I went out to the backyard to put the firewoods they had forgotten in the rain inside, on her stepmother's orders. Despite being already wet, the sky was dark now and the frogs were singing. As she bent to pick a stick, she heard a soft voice from the other side of the fence. "Thank you again, miss." She turned quickly. It was him, the beggar. He was standing just beyond the back fence, dry now, but his eyes still held that same mysterious calm. "You're still here," he whispered. "I left, but I stayed nearby. I had to make sure you were okay." "Why?" "Because you're kind, and kindness is rare." He gave her a small, soft smile and then turned and walked away again. E&I stood still, confused, but a small smile crept to her lips too. That night, after the beggar had left, with a soft smile and a whisper, "Thank you," E&I lay on her raffia mat and slept like a baby. Her heart felt light, not because she had saved the world, but because she had listened to it. The next morning, she woke up before the cock crowed, swept the compound, and fetched water from the nearby stream. As she returned, she noticed footprints at the entrance of their gate. She paused. Could it be him? She whispered, her heart skipping. Just then, her 2 stepsisters, Amaka and Ada, walked out, yawning loudly like goats. Amaka's eyes lit up as she spotted the footprints too. "And your husband came again." "Oh yes, he left his royal footprints for you," Ada added, bursting into laughter. E&I ignored them, but her cheeks flushed with quiet anger. That week, the beggar came again and again, always around late afternoon, quietly sitting on the bench in the veranda, hands folded politely on his lap. He never overstayed. He never demanded. He never touched anything unless it was offered. And E&I was always the one to greet him. She'd offer him her own portion of rice and beans, served in an old stainless plate. The beggar would bow slightly, whisper a thank you, and eat slowly, like a man who had not just hunger in his belly but respect in his soul. Her stepsisters found this hilarious. "Husband is back from work," Amaka would say and burst into giggles. "Hope he brought you suya from the dustbin," Ada would add, making mocking kissing sounds. And I would frown. "Will you people stop calling him my husband? But you serve him food." You sit beside him like two chickens in love. What should we call him then, your prince in sackcloth? Ianai would sigh and walk away. But even though their words stung, she never stopped offering the beggar food. One evening, as she handed him a small bowl of food, the beggar smiled. He had missing teeth, but his eyes twinkled. "Thank you, Ianai." "You're welcome," she whispered. From the doorway, a maca hissed. Romance of the century. Later that same week, Festus came again. Festus, the man the stepmother had been pushing her to marry. He wore gold chains and always came with a smell of strong perfume and cigarette. He had 2 cars and was known for flashing money around the village. But Ianai never liked him. This time, Festus brought crates of malt, a carton of noodles, and an envelope filled with money. "Let me see Ianai," he said to her father. Her father cleared his throat. "She said she won't come out." "What?" "She said if we force her again, she'll run away." The room fell silent. Ianai's stepmother blinked. "She said that." Her father nodded slowly. "Although she's not a child anymore." The next morning when Festus came back, Ianai's stepmother shocked everyone. She smiled at Festus and said, "Well, since Ianai is not interested, what about my first daughter, Amaka? She's ripe and ready." Festus smirked. "She's fine." "Oh, but we already agreed on Ianai." Her father stepped in. And Ianai it must be. The arrangement was with her. The stepmother folded her arms tightly and stared at her husband. From that day, her attitude changed. She no longer smiled when Festus came around. She no longer pressured Ianai to wear fine clothes when he visited. Instead, she secretly pushed Amaka forward, cooking for Festus, bringing him water to wash his hands, sitting beside him during visits. But Festus still asked for Ianai. A few days later, he returned with his people. They picked a date for the introduction. It was to be in 3 weeks. Everyone was excited except Ianai and, surprisingly, her stepmother. That night, Ianai sat outside alone, staring at the stars. The beggar had not come that evening. For the first time, she missed him. She missed the peace he brought. She missed his quiet thank you. She missed the way he made her feel human. Just then, the wind blew gently, and she felt something, a presence. She turned. The beggar was standing there, silent, looking at her with eyes that held more stories than any man she had ever known. He sat down slowly, and Ianai brought him the last portion of beans left in the pot. As he ate, she sat beside him quietly. She didn't tell him about the introduction. She didn't say a word, but her heart was heavy. And somehow he knew. That week was heavy. Ianai didn't smile much anymore, not even when the beggar came. She was kind to him still, offering him food, a seat, a nod, but her eyes no longer shone the way they used to. Something was eating her up inside. And then that evening came. The sun had barely gone down when Festus arrived. This time, he didn't come alone. 3 cars drove into the compound. One black Jeep in front, a red Corolla behind it, and an old Camry carrying 2 older men, one of whom was his uncle. Festus had come to fix the wedding date. The compound suddenly turned busy. Ianai's stepmother ran out to welcome them with her scarf flying off her head. Her stepsisters cleaned chairs and fanned the visitors with folded newspapers. Ianai's father, Pa Amos, stood up to greet them with a forced smile, shaking hands and welcoming Festus and his people. But Ianai disappeared. When she had seen the cars through the window, she ran straight into her small room. She locked the door, fell on her mat, and burst into tears. No, 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 she cried into her pillow. She didn't want Festus. She had said it again and again, but no one seemed to listen. No one but her father, who still hadn't given a final answer. Outside, drinks were shared. Laughter filled the air. The visitors sat, relaxed, thinking everything was fine. Then, out of nowhere, a shadow entered the compound. Dressed in his usual tattered shirt and trousers, barefoot, and carrying a small bag tied with rope, the beggar came again. The stepsisters saw him first. Huh, Amaka gasped. Oh! Ada giggled. Just in time, Ianai's real husband has arrived. Festus looked at the man and frowned. Who's that? He asked without waiting. Amaka said, That's Ianai's husband-to-be, sir. He visits every day. She gives him food, sits with him, sometimes for hours. Ada added, He even sits in the veranda like he owns the house. Festus turned to Pa Amos sharply. Is this true? Pa Amos' face dropped. He comes, yes, but he's just a beggar. Ianai is kind. She gives him food sometimes. Festus stood up slowly. Ianai's stepmother, who had been smiling and dancing earlier, now wore a serious face. She stood up and walked to Festus. Let me tell you the truth, Festus, she said. Since this beggar started coming, Ianai has changed. She said she won't marry you. It is because of this man. He must have charmed her. Amaka nodded. Yes. She used to smile at the mention of Festus. Now she frowns like someone poured pepper in her eyes. Festus' eyes widened. So you all allowed a beggar to take over your home? Pa Amos shouted, Enough. That's not what happened. Ianai is a good girl. She helps everyone. That man never asked her for anything. He just sits, eats, and goes. He's never done anything wrong. But Festus had already turned away. He stormed toward the gate. Festus, wait. One of his uncles called. Let us talk this through, the other added. But Festus was done. She can marry the beggar if she wants, he shouted. He entered his black jeep and slammed the door. The other visitors rushed behind him, trying to change his mind, but he started the car, reversed, and zoomed off. The other cars followed him. Immediately, there was a dead silence in the compound. Then Ada burst into laughter. Amaka joined. Mommy, your plan has worked. Ianai has married a beggar. Hope she gives birth to twins on the street. Their mother tried to laugh, but it came out crooked. Her face was red with joy and excitement, but she dared not show it to her husband. Pa Amos stood up, furious. You have all lost your minds. Do you know what you have just done? He turned to his wife. You wanted Ianai to marry Festus like a goat to the slaughter. Now see what your mouth has caused. What? Is it my fault? She barked. She's the one feeding a beggar under our roof. Pa Amos pointed at her, his voice calm but heavy. That beggar has more manners than all of you put together. No one replied. Inside her room, Ianai didn't know what had just happened, but something deep inside her chest felt lighter. As if a heavy stone had been lifted, she sniffed, wiped her eyes, and whispered, Maybe, just maybe, I can breathe again. But little did she know the real story was just beginning. Because that beggar didn't leave the compound that night. He stayed, and the rain began to fall again. To be continued in part 2.